Hello, we're going to go over this kind of organizational tool kit that helps us understand the differences and the similarities between some of these different figures. We've been talking about parallelograms and rectangles, but those two both follow under the umbrella of a quadrilateral. Quadrilaterals simply mean four sides. It's a polygon with exactly four sides. In each of these categories, some we have some things written, we have some characteristics of a quadrilateral or of a kite or whatever the figure is. Quadrilateral is pretty broad, so if we want to get specific, we have to look under this specific quadrilateral, like we've talked about parallelograms. The definition is a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. That's its definition, but it also has many characteristics which we've written in our notes, like pairs of opposite sides are equal, pairs of opposite angles are equal, and others. We've written those in the notes. You can pause and write this in your toolkit if you want to. We just started talking about rectangles. The definition is a quadrilateral with four right angles. But we also talked about the fact that a rectangle is a parallelogram, because even though that's not in its definition, all of its characteristics would suggest that it is the same as a parallelogram. But remember, not all parallelograms are rectangles, but all rectangles fall under the definition of a parallelogram, because it turns out they have pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. And I should have, and I haven't filled this out completely, but we could write that down in the characteristics of a rectangle. Pairs of opposite sides are parallel. We're going to move on to rhombus and square. I'm going to let's leave their definitions up there. A rhombus is also a quadrilateral with four congruent sides. But it still might be one of these other things as well. Like, is it a rectangle? I don't think so. Based on the look, it doesn't say anything anywhere about 90-degree angles. So I don't think it's a rectangle, but could it be a parallelogram? If it has two pairs of opposite sides parallel, and sure enough it does, although once again I haven't written that, but we could write it. I think I know why I didn't write them, because it falls under the umbrella of quadrilateral and parallelogram. So again, a rhombus is a parallelogram. It's just a different type of parallelogram. It has two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. It also has some other unique characteristics that are not always true of all parallelograms, and that is the diagonals are perpendicular. That's not always true of every parallelogram or every rectangle, which is why it's specific to a rhombus. Remember, perpendicular means they form 90-degree angles. The diagonals also bisect the angles of the rhombus. So if I drew a line right in here, this angle would be bisected, and the same across here. And that's not true of every parallelogram or every rectangle, but it's true of every rhombus. So a rhombus is becoming even more specific, another type of parallelogram. A square is a quadrilateral with four right angles and four congruent sides. Well, check it out. A rhombus has four congruent sides, and it's a quadrilateral. So is a square a rhombus? The answer is yes. A square is a rhombus, but not every rhombus is a square, similar to the rectangle parallelogram situation. A square is a quadrilateral. A square is a parallelogram. A square could almost be considered a rectangle even, because it's got the four right angles. So it's all of those things. The square is like, it's got it all going on. But a square is also a rhombus, but not every rhombus is a square. If you have a rhombus with four right angles, then it is a square. So hopefully, and I know that can definitely be very, very confusing. There's a few other little organizational charts that can help us better understand it. I filled this in already. I probably shouldn't have, but save a little time. All of these things are polygons. Remember, we defined that the first day of this unit. And that is enclosed figure with straight sides. What else? I have to go back and read it. There's multiple sides. You could have a 5-sided polygon, right? A pentagon. You could have an 8-sided polygon, an octagon. But our focus has become on 4-sided polygons, which are called quadrilaterals. And more specifically, our focus has been on parallelograms that fall in the circle of quadrilaterals. They're 4 sides, but they're more specifically 2 pairs of parallel sides. And then we got to focus on rectangles, which are also in the circle of parallelograms. A rectangle is a parallelogram. A rectangle is a quadrilateral. A rectangle is a polygon. It's all of those things that are on the outer circles. And then we're moving on now to rhombus. A rhombus is also a parallelogram. It's also a quadrilateral. It's also a polygon. But it's when we get more and more specific with its characteristics, we call it a rhombus if it has 4 equal sides. And the square is the one that's got it all going on, right? A square is a rectangle. A square is a rhombus. A square is a parallelogram. A square is a quadrilateral. A square is a polygon. A square has 4 equal sides. That's like a rhombus. A square has 4 right angles. That's a rectangle. A square has 2 pairs of opposite sides parallel. That's a parallelogram. So the square falls into every single circle we've got here, except these guys over here. We haven't addressed those yet. We'll probably be getting to those trapezoids. Then we have a more specific trapezoid called isosceles trapezoid. We'll get to that later. And then a kite's just an oddball. The only thing it's got in common with any of them is that it's a quadrilateral. In any case, we'll get to those later. Let's look at another way of saying the same exact thing. Instead of a Venn diagram, we have this flow chart. Again, every one of these falls under the umbrella of quadrilateral. Our focus has been over here the past few days, and that is a parallelogram. And all of these things fall under the umbrella of a parallelogram. We have 2 types. We have a rectangle and a rhombus type. And then the square falls under all of those umbrellas. The square is a rectangle, the square is a rhombus, the square is a parallelogram, and on and on. Again, we'll get to trapezoids, isosceles trapezoids, a specific type of trapezoid, and then a kite is just an odd guy. But he falls into the quadrilaterals, if I can say it right. Okay, so that covers kind of our organizational charts with some characteristics on that first page. I'll do another video for the specific 4.5 lesson.